I don't know why I'm recording this. Nobody's coming. Nobody's left. Maybe I just need to talk to something that doesn't argue, cry, or get bit. Maybe I'm trying to make sure someone hears what happened here. Or maybe it's just for me. Either way, it's day 487 since the outbreak, and I'm still stuck in a place I once paid tuition for. My name's Connor. I was a junior in media studies. Now I sleep under a desk in the math department, live off canned peaches and cold ravioli, and carry a crossbow I found wedged under a vending machine. Not because I'm cool, not because I knew how to use it. It was just there, and I was tired of using chair legs. This university used to be a refugee camp. You probably saw it on the news early on. Big white tarps over the quad, makeshift tents stretching from the library to the athletic center. The National Guard rolled in with barbed wire and checkpoints and told us we were safe. They dropped off pallets of supplies every 3 days, ran health checks in the parking structure, and built that ugly watchtower over the statue of President Granger. It felt surreal, like living in a disaster movie on a campus tour. That didn't last long. When the cities fell, we stopped getting helicopters. Then the gate guards left. One morning, we woke up to find the Humvees gone and the gates open. No explanation, no goodbye, just open gates and an empty perimeter. The infected came in 3 nights later. Now it's us, what's left of us. Maybe 30, maybe less. We don't count anymore. Doesn't matter. This morning started with the usual, rain dripping through broken windows, the sound of dragging feet far off near the business school, and me checking the traps near the stairwell. It's dumb, but we hang little bells on fishing line, just in case something wanders in. Zombies are dumb, but they're not silent. Someone stole the last can of chicken from our stash 2 nights ago, so I volunteered to check the old art building. I hate that place. It smells like mildew and paint thinner, and the second floor collapsed sometime around day 200, so every step feels like a death sentence. But someone said they saw sealed boxes in the back studio, and I hadn't pulled my weight lately. I made my way across the courtyard slowly, using the overgrown hedges as cover. The infected don't hunt like animals, they just wander. But if one sees you, the rest follow, like pigeons. Rotting, moaning pigeons with teeth. Halfway there, I spotted one. Slumped against a bench, head hanging low. It twitched when the wind kicked up. I froze, waited. It didn't move again. Probably dormant. That happens sometimes, like they power down when there's nothing to chase. I slipped past, stepping over a blown-out trash can and around a rusted-out bicycle. Everything on campus is frozen in time. A spilled coffee cup on the steps. A backpack ripped open by squirrels. Flyers still taped to walls, advertising a Career Futures Summit that never happened. Inside the art building, it was darker than I remembered. Most of the windows were either boarded up or covered with emergency blankets. I crept down the hallway with the crossbow raised, more out of habit than readiness. I only had 2 bolts left, and one of them was slightly bent. I couldn't afford to miss. The back studio was musty and cold. I kicked aside a broken easel and started checking the shelves. Dust everywhere. I found a few paint cans, some dried-out markers, and a shrink-wrapped box labeled Mixed Media Supplies. I opened it with a key from my pocket knife. Inside, glue sticks, yarn, glitter, and, thank God, 6 protein bars. Expired? Probably, but not by much. I stuffed them in my backpack and froze. Something had moved behind the storage curtain. It wasn't loud, just a shift in fabric. But in this silence, it screamed. I backed toward the door slowly, gripping the crossbow tight. Then the curtain fell, and a skinny arm flopped into view. It was Evan. He was a freshman, math major, I think. Looked like he hadn't eaten in a week. His face was hollow, lips cracked. He blinked once, slow and confused. No bite marks, no blood, just starvation and fear. I whispered his name, and he croaked out something like water. I gave him the last third of my canteen. He drank like it hurt. After a minute he whispered, "Are you alone?" I nodded. He said, "Good." Then he passed out. I dragged him back to the main building on a folding cart someone had abandoned during the first evacuation. The roads are too dangerous, but the side paths between lecture halls are still clear if you know where to step. Every 100 feet, I stopped and listened. Birds, wind. Somewhere far off, the low moan of something still walking, but nothing near. When we got back, I called for help. Bree and Marcus came out first, helping me pull Evan inside. Bree's our medic. Well, she was a pre-nursing student. Now she's a medic because she owns a stethoscope and hasn't panicked during an emergency. Marcus used to be ROTC, he thinks he's in charge, he might be right. Evan's stable now, feverish but no infection signs. Bree says he'll make it if we find something with calories soon. I gave her the protein bars. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't have to. She just looked at me for a second longer than usual and passed one to Evan's side. Tonight, I'm on rooftop watch. It's freezing. The wind cuts through everything, even the fire barrel we rigged from a trash can and magnesium strips. I stare out at the trees, the empty roads, the radio tower in the distance that hasn't blinked in months. There's a herd out there, we know that. It circles every week or so, never quite touching the campus. We think it's the noise from the biology lab's old emergency speaker, still stuck on a loop. Every time it crackles, the dead drift that way for a while. It's saved us more than once, but the battery's dying, and when it stops, they'll find us. Marcus wants to lure the herd away with one of the golf carts and a speaker rig. I think it's suicide. Bree thinks it's desperate, but the herd's getting closer each time. Maybe next week there won't be a next time. I watched one of them tonight, a tall one in what used to be a cheerleader's uniform. She stood at the campus gates, rocking slowly, not trying to come in, just standing. Then she turned and walked away, back into the fog. She wasn't the first I'd seen like that. Quiet, still, like something was half remembered in them. I've stopped trying to understand what's left in their minds. Theories come and go. Bree thinks the virus eats through their brain slowly, that what we see are reflexes, twitches, echoes. Marcus swears they're adapting, becoming something more. I think they're just shells. Empty, decaying, slow-moving shells drawn to sound and smell, and we assign meaning because we need to, because it's easier than admitting the world broke in a way we'll never fix. At sunrise, I crawled down from the rooftop ladder and felt the cold sink into my knees. I hadn't slept, but that wasn't new. Half of us don't sleep properly anymore. Dreams are worse than the noise. I stopped by the second-floor lecture hall we've turned into a sleeping area. Tarps hang between rows of desks, and we've stacked chairs for makeshift privacy walls. I stepped around Kayla, who was curled up in 2 coats and someone's old graduation robe, her breathing shallow and quiet. Evan was still out, his forehead slick with sweat. Bree was next to him, chewing on half a granola bar and reading from a torn-up emergency medical guide. Her hair was tied back with an old shoelace, and she looked like she'd aged a decade since this began. I didn't say anything. She gave me a nod. That was enough. The rest of the day was spent preparing the cart. Marcus had mapped out a route that looped around the outer edge of campus and down toward the faculty housing area. The plan was simple. Too simple, really. Mount a portable speaker to the cart, blast one of the campus alert recordings on a loop, and draw the infected away from the library zone, where the majority of us stayed. It was a gamble, especially with fuel being nearly gone, but the herds had been getting too close, and something had to be done before they swarmed us for real. The cart itself was a wreck. Batteries salvaged from janitorial floor scrubbers, tires half flat and wrapped in strips of rubber from science lab goggles, the rear-view mirror cracked. We'd spray-painted over the original university logo months ago. Seemed pointless to keep the branding alive when the world didn't care anymore. I spent the morning helping Marcus strip the speaker down to bare wires and patch it into a working battery. He worked with quiet focus, hands always moving, lips pressed together like he was holding back everything he didn't want to say out loud. I held the wires steady while he wrapped them in duct tape, sealing it with a match to melt the adhesive. I asked if he thought it would work. He shrugged and said, "Hope so." That was the most optimism I'd heard from him in weeks. We had a dry run at noon. No sound at first, then static, then the long high tone of the emergency alert system that used to play from the stadium during drills. The message came next, an automated female voice, distorted and metallic. "This is a shelter-in-place directive. Remain indoors. Help is on the way. This is a shelter-in-place directive." It looped like that, over and over, haunting if you listened too long. We let it play for 10 minutes, watching from the top floor of the old science building, Within 5 minutes, 4 infected had started moving toward the sound. By minute 8, a dozen more had joined them, slow and staggered, drawn like moths to flame. When we shut the loop off, they stopped walking, milled around the cart for a few seconds, then wandered again, some staying close, others losing interest. But the direction was clear. The sound worked. The plan was to run it for real tomorrow at dusk. More shadows, more concealment, fewer risks if something went wrong. The rest of the day was quiet in the wrong kind of way. No infected near the gates, no signs of movement from the tree line. Kayla said it felt like the air before a thunderstorm, even though the skies were clear. I agreed. Everyone felt it. No one said it. That night, I slept in the corner of the debate room, under the podium. It used to be filled with folding chairs and a whiteboard cluttered with half-finished flowcharts about public speaking techniques. Now the only sound was the slow drip from a broken ceiling pipe and the occasional cough from someone down the hall. I had one bolt left for the crossbow. I cleaned it before bed, wiped the fletching with a damp cloth, just something to do with my hands. At some point after midnight, I heard footsteps. Not the infected kind, not the scraping drag of ruined limbs. These were careful, deliberate. I held my breath and waited. A shadow moved past the frosted glass window, a figure, tall, thin, limping slightly, then it was gone. I grabbed the crossbow, stepped out into the hallway. The lights had been dead for months, but moonlight cut through the western windows. I didn't say anything, didn't call out, I just walked. The figure had gone toward the atrium, once a campus hub, now a wreck of overturned benches and burnt-out vendor cots. I moved slowly, staying to the wall. At the edge of the stairwell, I stopped. A shape was crouched near the vending machine bay, not looting, just sitting, breathing. I stepped closer and whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." The shape turned. It was a girl, maybe 19. Long black hair, tangled and matted, one eye swollen. She stared at me, unblinking. "I came from the dorms," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I thought no one was left. I lowered the crossbow. The dorms were overrun 3 months ago. I was in the storage tunnel, came up through maintenance. She looked half dead. Bree would need to check her. I told her to follow me, and she did, though every step looked like it hurt. I didn't ask her name, not yet. Bree checked her quietly, then handed her a half-empty bottle of water and some old crackers. "No visible bites," she said to me later, "but she's weak, might have a fever, keep her isolated." We cleared a small room near the music department, a former practice chamber with thick walls. She curled up in a corner and slept without complaint. By morning, the others had started asking questions. Marcus wanted to know how she got past the outer perimeter. Bree said she was no threat unless she turned. Kayla just stood near the door, watching through the tiny window. I volunteered to take the cart out. No one argued. It was almost a relief, something to do that didn't involve choosing sides or waiting for someone else to get sick. We pushed the cart down the west access road at dusk. Marcus stood guard on the rooftop with binoculars. I had the speaker rigged and running by the time the sky turned purple. I hit the switch. The sound echoed across the campus, bouncing between ruined buildings and rusted-out cars. "This is a shelter-in-place directive. Remain indoors. Help is on the way." I backed off, slipped into a service shed, and watched through the cracked door. Movement came fast. 3, then 6, then too many to count. They moved slowly but with purpose, the same way ants swarm something dropped on the sidewalk. The cheerleader was among them, the tall one. She turned her head once, like she remembered this sound. Then she kept walking. I let them pass, waited an extra hour before killing the loop. It worked. We cleared the next 36 hours without incident. No infected at the gate, no scratching on the walls. For a brief moment, the weight lifted. But relief doesn't last here. On the second night after the test, the girl from the dorms was gone. No trace. Door left open. No blood, no noise, just vanished. We found a smear of food wrappers leading toward the tunnels beneath the gymnasium. Marcus said it was a trick, that she was scouting us for another group. Bree thought she was scared and ran. Kayla just said, "She left it open, that means something else came in." Now everyone's on edge again. We're pulling back our sleeping quarters, sealing more doors. The hallway lights flicker when we run the generator, and I've stopped leaving the crossbow more than arm's reach away. Bree moved Evan closer to the center of the building, just in case. He's awake more often now, but not talking much. Just watches us like he's still trying to process the fact that we're real. He scratches at his own arm sometimes, but he's not turning. I know what that looks like. This isn't it. This is stress and starvation chewing through someone's thoughts until nothing makes sense anymore. We've collapsed to one building now. The old communications center, ironically enough. A long rectangular block with narrow windows and thick doors halfway sunk into the slope behind the central quad. The acoustics in here used to be horrible during lectures. Now they're a blessing. You can hear movement in the hallways long before anything reaches your position. That gives us time. Not much, but some. Kayla and I spent most of the morning reinforcing the doors to the north stairwell. It's the last open path to the gym tunnels, and no one feels good about it anymore. The girl, still no name, still no trace, must have come and gone that way. Marcus suggested we collapse the whole staircase and bury it. Bree pushed back, said we needed the access in case we had to run. No one says it, but the idea of running has become a joke. We're not fast anymore. Not like we were in the first month when adrenaline could carry you 2 miles without feeling your legs. Now it's all soreness, stiff joints, and bad shoes. Kayla's sneakers are duct taped at the heel. Mine lost their soles sometime back in February. I've stuffed the gaps with cardboard, which soaks through every time the floor leaks. Midday brought a rare gift. Silence. No groaning from the outer fence. No footfalls echoing down the pipes. Just the occasional creak of shifting foundation and the birds outside that haven't left. They don't mind the dead. Maybe they don't even notice. Life goes on in weird ways. I checked the traps on the 3rd floor. We'd left some motion-triggered cans strung across the stairwell and one fishing line bell rigged near the outer window. Nothing disturbed. I stood there for a long time, staring at the field between the library and the chemistry annex. The grass is knee-high now, wild, unkempt. A deer moved through it, emaciated, ribs sharp beneath torn fur. It didn't see me. There was a time when I would have been excited to see a deer on campus. I went down into the basement next. It was part curiosity, part paranoia. The gym tunnels run below our wing, but there's no direct connection. Just a maintenance chute in the far corner with a bolted steel door and a keypad we haven't been able to power since the first blackout. That doesn't stop people from trying to get through it, though. Twice now we've found fresh marks around the lock, scratches from something metal, maybe a crowbar. Marcus thought it was someone from outside. Bree thought it was us, forgetting what we'd tried already, but I saw the scratches. They were new, clean. Whoever or whatever made them had done it recently. I set a few empty cans across the floor near the chute, careful not to make noise. Anything pushing through would knock them over first. Then I heard it, a dull clang. Not from inside the room, but below, through the steel, rhythmic, distant, like someone hammering pipe with weak arms. 4 taps, pause, 3 more. I froze, listened. Nothing after that. Back upstairs, I told Marcus. He didn't question it, just loaded his makeshift shotgun, a break barrel with sawed-down furniture, and posted up near the entrance to the stairwell. No argument, no discussion. That's where we're at now. Hear a noise, prep for the worst. Anything less is a death wish. Later that afternoon, Kayla and I went out. Not far, just to the edge of the quad. We needed wire from the old security booth. The box was already stripped down to its frame, but I'd remembered a backup relay stuffed behind the main panel from a campus tour before the outbreak. She stood lookout while I worked it loose. I scraped my hand open in the process, but the wire was intact. Still had shielding. We could use it for door alarms or maybe to rehook the rooftop antenna and scan shortwave again. We haven't heard anything on the radios in months, but sometimes I wonder if we're just not listening the right way. We saw smoke on the way back, thin, grey, rising from the edge of the faculty commons building. Not the kind from a barrel or pipe. This was cleaner, controlled, someone making a fire. We weren't alone. We brought the others out after nightfall, 5 of us total. Marcus with the shotgun, Kayla with her sharpened broom handle, Bree holding a utility knife like it was a scalpel. I had the crossbow. Evan stayed behind, barely conscious. We crossed through the undergrowth and circled the commons from the loading dock side. That fire wasn't just smoke, it was warmth. set in a metal trash bin in what used to be the faculty lounge. And around it were people, 4 of them, maybe more inside. Thin, older than us. One wore a university maintenance badge. Another still had a necktie, blackened with soot. They looked up when we stepped into the light, and for a second, no one moved. Then the one with the tie stood and said, "Don't shoot, we're not sick." Bree stepped forward. She asked the usual questions. Any bites? Any sickness? How long here? They answered in clipped tones, wary but not hostile. Said they'd been trapped in a basement when the camp fell. Doors collapsed during the fire. Been eating moldy emergency bars and condensation ever since. Only got out last week when a support beam cracked and let them crawl up through the records room. I believed them. Marcus didn't. We brought them back anyway. It wasn't kindness, not entirely. We need hands. The fences need work. Our stores are low, and someone needs to start making runs into the surrounding neighborhoods. More people means more risk, but it also means more options. That's how we think now. Risk versus resource, not who deserves what. By midnight, they were inside. One of them, Judith, a former admin assistant, was already patching up our radiator leak with scrap foil and gauze tape. The guy with the badge, Leo, said he used to do electrical for the science building. Said he could help us try the shortwave again. Marcus still kept his distance. He doesn't trust new faces, I understand why. But we can't keep bleeding people and never take in more. The lounge-turned-operations room had a different feel with more bodies. We'd pushed tables together to form a central supply station, food on one end, medical on the other, all inventory kept on scraps of legal pads, tallied in scratchy handwriting that meant nothing to anyone but Bree. She runs the numbers like it's the last thing she can still control. When she handed me the updated food list that morning, she didn't say anything. She didn't have to. 7 more mouths and barely enough for 10 days. Less if rationing fell apart again. Kayla and I worked the roof shift at sunrise. Thin frost coated the metal grating and the antenna was still leaning at an angle, held in place with copper wire and half a coat rack. Leo joined us an hour in. He carried a small bag of tools, the kind you'd find in a janitor's closet. Wire cutters, rusted pliers, a test light that barely glowed. He didn't talk much, just crouched beside the junction box and started stripping connections. "I'll need fresh copper if we want to reach anything beyond the perimeter," he said quietly, eyes fixed on the wire housing. "Most of this stuff's oxidized junk." "There's copper in the engineering labs," I told him, "but that's north end, off limits." He gave a slow nod. "Then we'll need to make it on limits." That phrase stuck with me. Make it on limits. Like boundaries didn't matter anymore. Maybe they don't. Not here. Not after this long. By noon, we were back inside. Judith had organized a corner of the admin wing into a cooking zone. Bree had given her permission to open one of the sealed rations. Military stuff from early in the camp days. I didn't know what was in it until I walked past and smelled beef stew. The scent stopped me cold. Real food. Salt. Heat. Meat. Even if it came from a vacuum pouch older than I was. We all got a spoonful. Just a spoonful. Enough to taste it and remember what eating like a person felt like. Evan sat propped against a file cabinet, cradling his serving like it might disappear. His eyes had more life in them now, less hollow. Marcus stayed in the hall, didn't touch the stew, just stared at the newcomers as if waiting for something to snap. It happened later, just past dark. A sound, soft but deliberate. Not the tapping I'd heard before. This was closer. Wet, scraping. Kayla was the first to react. She'd been stacking books into a makeshift barricade by the basement access when she heard it. Said it reminded her of someone dragging their hand along a brick wall. I followed her down, crossbow loaded, flashlight clipped to my shoulder. At the end of the hall, past the records room, the far wall had shifted, just slightly, enough that the line of dust we'd marked was broken. I pressed my hand to it, cold, firm, but there was pressure on the other side, something pushing outward, slow and steady. We didn't wait, called Marcus. Told Judith and Leo to prep fallback routes. Bree secured Evan with a chair wedged against his door. Everyone knew their role. Everyone moved like they'd rehearsed it 1,000 times, because we had. Marcus and I covered the hallway with what weapons we had. He'd modified a flare launcher into a one-shot slug gun. Not accurate, not fast, but it would rip through drywall and most skulls. I had the crossbow, both bolts sharpened and rebalanced with duct tape feathers. We waited in silence. Then the wall cracked. The bottom corner caved in first, a wet crunch followed by a puff of dust and mildew. A hand slid through, grey, torn, nails stripped, bone exposed. The arm jerked once, then again. Marcus raised the gun. I held my breath. The rest of the wall gave way. They poured in, not many, but enough. 5, maybe 6, half crawling, half stumbling, one of them missing a jaw entirely. Their movements were erratic, like their legs remembered how to walk, but their brains forgot the rhythm. They didn't growl, no screams, just the wet shuffle of limbs and the sound of skin dragging across linoleum. Marcus fired. The flare gun kicked like a mule. The slug hit one in the chest, spun it backward into the wall. I took the nearest with a bolt through the eye, but the second one kept coming. I ducked, let it slam into the bookcase behind me, then stabbed upward with a rusted screwdriver. Kayla joined in with her broom spear, jabbing at knees and ribs. Judith shouted from the hallway, telling us another was circling from the north stairwell. We didn't ask how. We didn't want to know. The breach was bigger than it looked. Maybe a crack in the tunnel floor, maybe a broken pipe gave them access. Didn't matter. They were here now. By the time we finished, 2 more were down, and the rest had retreated, crawling, not running, like rats disappearing into the walls. I sealed the hole with a filing cabinet and 2 broken chairs. Temporary, useless in the long run, but it bought us minutes, maybe hours. In the aftermath, Bree tended to Kayla's arm, a shallow cut along the bicep from a chipped desk edge. Marcus reloaded the flare gun with the last shell. I retrieved my second bolt from the corpse's shoulder, bent, ruined. Leo sat near the stairwell, shaking. Not fear exactly, more like frustration. "They're using the drains," he muttered. "The ventilation shafts between buildings, the old ones, pre-war. I saw the blueprints once." "You're sure?" Bree asked. He nodded. "If one found a way in, more will." We didn't argue. That night we slept in shifts. No fire, no light, just the sounds of metal creaking and wind moaning through distant gaps. I lay awake under the podium again, crossbow across my chest. Every noise sounded like a door opening. By dawn, none of us felt rested. Bree looked like she hadn't blinked all night, and Marcus was already outside before anyone finished rationing breakfast. He dragged 2 of the dead to the edge of the courtyard, laid them against the cracked fountain like broken statues. The smell was rising fast. Kayla covered her face with a shredded lab coat while we helped pile cinder blocks against the basement access. They wouldn't hold for long, not against real pressure, but it was the best we had. We weren't masons, just students and staff with tired arms and barely enough strength to stack rocks. Once the wall was up, Marcus gathered us in the old broadcast room. The table had been cleared of monitors and the walls stripped of foam padding months ago. Only the faint ghost of old maps and tape outlines remained. He laid out a torn section of the engineering campus layout. Leo stood beside him, pointing at a square marked Workshop C. That, he said, was where the copper was, still sealed behind blast doors that had held up against fire and collapse. The catch? It was on the far end of the north wing, well outside our cleared paths. "I'll go," I said. I didn't wait for approval. It made sense. I knew the paths better than anyone, and I still had mobility, more than most of the others. Besides, it meant I didn't have to spend another hour sitting around waiting for the pipes to groan again. Kayla offered to go too. Bree vetoed it. Her wound from the night before looked worse this morning. Not infected, but angry and red. She stayed behind with Judith to reinforce the barricade near the copy center while Marcus and I packed gear. He handed me a spare hammer from the old tool cart and a bottle of iodine we used to mark doorframes, red if a space was unsafe, white if it had been swept. It was a language now, one we used in silence to keep each other alive. We set out mid-morning. No cloud cover. Sun low but sharp, casting long shadows across the overgrown walkways. We moved through admin first, then past the collapsed theater stage that had become home to at least 24 infected during the winter freeze. We didn't go near it. Just the memory of the moaning that echoed from under the tarps was enough. The north wing had held up better than we expected. The architecture building had fewer broken windows, and a few of the doors were still intact. We passed graffiti from the early days of the quarantine, messages in chalk and spray paint begging for help, listing names, radio frequencies long since silent. Marcus paused in front of one that simply read, "Please tell my sister I tried." He didn't say anything, just stared at it for a moment before moving on. By noon, we reached the outer doors of Workshop C. A thick chain had been wrapped through the handles, padlocked shut. Someone had sealed it tight, likely before the fall. The key was long gone, but the chain had rusted enough that Marcus managed to wedge the crowbar under the padlock and snap it loose with 3 hard strikes. Each one echoed like a gunshot. We froze afterward, listening. Nothing stirred. Inside, the workshop was a time capsule. Dust-covered benches, half-finished projects, a robotic arm mid-assembly, its joints stiff with age. The copper wire Leo needed was coiled in spools along the back wall, still neatly zip-tied and marked for department use. We filled our packs quickly. The room felt too still, like the moment just before a storm rolls in. I found the professor in the hallway on the way out. At first, I didn't recognize him. His name was Dr. Ruzak, mechanical engineering. Tall, wore corduroy in the dead of summer. His hair had always been a mess. It still was. But the eyes, those were different. Wide. Too wide. Empty in a way that went beyond death. He stood near the vending machine alcove, arms slack at his sides, head tilted just slightly, like he was trying to hear something no one else could. Marcus froze beside me. I had the crossbow raised, but I didn't shoot. Not yet. Ruzak didn't move. He just stared at the wall. His jaw hung open slightly, twitching at the edge like he was trying to form a word he no longer remembered. His right foot dragged an inch forward, then stopped. Marcus mouthed, "Back slowly." We did. 5 steps, 10. Then Ruzak turned. He didn't lunge. He didn't sprint. He just walked. Quiet, deliberate. No moaning, no snarling, just the faint scrape of his foot on tile. The same foot again and again. The skin around his throat had torn, probably from falling downstairs, and I could see the cartilage of his trachea when he turned toward the light. That's when I fired. The bolt hit just below his left cheekbone. His head jerked sideways, but he didn't fall, didn't even stumble. He kept walking, slower now, as if confused by the impact, but not deterred. I reloaded. Marcus stepped in front of me with the crowbar and swung hard across the professor's knees. That did it. Ruzak crumpled sideways, body folding at the joints like wet paper. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slammed the crowbar down again, once, twice, 3 times, until the movement stopped. We left him there. Covered the body with a lab coat out of instinct. Not respect. Just something to put a barrier between then and now. We didn't talk much on the way back. The weight of the copper wire was nothing compared to what we'd seen, not the death. We were used to that. But the eyes. The way he moved. Not like the others, not like he was chasing. More like he was still trying to teach a class in his head. When we reached the edge of the commons, we saw smoke again. This time black, sharp, bitter. We ran. The east wing was burning. A fire had caught in the paper storage vault, probably from one of Judith's improvised heating units. By the time we reached the corridor, the flames were climbing the walls, feeding on decades-old stacks of forms and record books. Bree was already there, directing a bucket line from the restrooms while Kayla tried to pry open the emergency valve for the old sprinkler system. It took half an hour to smother the worst of it. We lost 2 classrooms. The corridor is sealed now with overturned shelves and plasterboard to keep the smoke from drifting into the habitable areas. Judith didn't speak when we asked her what happened, just nodded, took the blame, and went back to fixing the ventilation duct seals. We didn't press her. Accidents happen. But everyone's nerves are frayed thinner now. That night, I sat with Evan again. He's lucid now, asking questions. He wanted to know if the herd was still circling. I said no, not for a while, that was true. But it was also changing. Fewer wanderers, more of them standing still, watching. Earlier, Kayla said she saw one standing near the roof line across the quad, staring straight into our windows. She said it never moved. Just stood there until the sun dipped behind the library, then turned and walked into the trees. We didn't talk about it after. Everyone heard what she said, but no one repeated it. It sat between us like a knife left in the table, visible, sharp, and waiting to be picked up. Maybe it meant nothing, maybe it was just a sick fluke, But when things stop behaving the way we expect them to, when even the infected begin to shift in their habits, it eats at something deeper than fear. It corrodes the rules we've been clinging to for survival. That same night, Marcus proposed something I hadn't expected, an exit plan. Not just a scouting run, not another broadcast test or food retrieval, a real attempt. One final push to get beyond the tree line, past the dorm remains, out through the northern service fence where the maintenance trails cut into the hillside. He'd been watching the infected patterns for days, said the eastern quadrant stayed quiet longer now, less movement, fewer shadow groups. The herds had changed their loop, possibly because of our last broadcast, or because something new drew them elsewhere. Either way, we had a window, maybe a few days. He wanted to use it. We met in the old conference room with the stained carpet and broken blinds. The map was unrolled across 2 desks, nailed together. The last time we gathered like that, we were counting MRE packs and arguing over whether bleach or vinegar was safer for water purification. Now we were discussing timing, routes, and how to move 19 people, half of them half-starved, and a few still too weak to walk more than 100 yards without sitting down. Bree didn't want to leave. I understood. She wasn't sentimental, but she was calculated. Inside these walls she had protocols, backup plans, ration formulas, predictable threats. Out there, we had none of that. But she didn't stop us either. She just stood back with her arms crossed, chewing the inside of her cheek the way she does when she's running disaster scenarios in her head. Leo mapped the electrical tunnels, routes that connected maintenance sublevels to utility sheds near the outer fencing. Judith helped scavenge blankets and coats. Evan volunteered to be the radio spotter, even though he was still barely steady on his feet. He said he owed us. I didn't argue. We packed in silence. A few whispered jokes, but mostly the kind of quiet that falls before an exam you know you didn't study enough for. We were going to try in the morning, at first light. If we waited longer, the weather might turn. The clouds had been building for days, thick and low, carrying the kind of humidity that makes wood swell and paper curl. At some point before dawn, the power blinked on. We hadn't touched the generator in hours. No one had. The lights stuttered down the hallway, buzzing like insects. Then the speakers kicked on, old intercoms patched through static. And then a voice, faint, garbled, but human. If you're still receiving this, evac point, north wall breach, supplies cached, marked with... It cut off. We stood frozen, every one of us listening, eyes wide. Kayla looked like she couldn't breathe. Marcus tried the receiver, but nothing came back. Just white noise. It could have been a fluke, a looped message from weeks ago. Could have been a desperate survivor somewhere in the perimeter, sending out one last call before everything collapsed. But it was direction. And for people who haven't had direction in months, that was gold. We adjusted the plan. North Wall became priority. The message mentioned a breach, so we wouldn't have to cut through the fence ourselves. That saved time and noise. We split into 2 groups. One would prep and clear the tunnel route, the other would move the injured and non-combatants to the staging point. The air felt heavier as we moved. Not just nerves, the pressure had changed. I could feel it in my ears, that muffled sensation before a storm. By mid-morning, we had everyone staged in the old archives office, near the access hatch to the underground conduit. I led the crawl with Leo behind me, flashlight pinned to his shoulder and a makeshift map drawn on his knee pad with charcoal. The passage was tighter than I remembered. Damp, cracked in places where roots had broken through. The air smelled like rust and wet stone. 20 minutes in, we reached the junction. A ladder shaft rose up to a rusted panel that hadn't been opened in years. We heard wind above, real wind, open-air wind. It was the first time in over a year I'd felt it that close. I pushed the panel with my back. It resisted, then gave way with a groan of warped metal. Above was a narrow maintenance yard, lined with barbed fencing, most of it sagging or gone. Beyond that, the forest. But we weren't the first ones there. The cache was real. Someone had left 2 pallets of supply crates half buried under a collapsed awning, MREs, water canisters, even what looked like ammo boxes. They were picked over, but still usable. The ground around them was churned and muddy, littered with boot prints. And then we saw the bodies, 4 of them, all in partial uniform, not military, not police. Private gear, PMC by the look of it. Their gear had been stripped, and their throats were torn open, not cut. There were no gunshots, No burn marks, just torn flesh and empty packs. One of them had written something in the dirt beside him with his fingers. The word was run. I signaled Leo to fall back and he didn't argue. We started ferrying people up one at a time, keeping noise to a minimum, eyes on the forest line. Kayla emerged last. She'd carried Evan on her back most of the way, then passed him up through the hatch like a bundle of wet laundry. Her face was soaked in sweat, and she didn't speak. She just nodded and checked her knife. That's when we heard it. Not groaning, not shuffling. Footsteps. Precise. Coordinated. A line of them moving through the trees, just out of sight. Marcus raised the flare launcher. I reached for the crossbow, and then they stepped into view. 6 of them. Infected, but not like the others. These weren't the slow, confused bodies that stumbled in groups. These were leaner, cleaner, not fresh, but less decayed. Their eyes followed us. Their mouths didn't gape, they didn't run. They walked in formation, tight, focused. I fired first. The bolt hit the lead one in the neck. It staggered but didn't fall. Kayla charged with the knife, slicing at the legs, cutting tendons. Marcus dropped one with a direct shot to the chest, but another moved around the flank, fast. We fought hard, desperate. 2 of our group were dragged back into the trees. We couldn't save them. One screamed for almost a minute before it stopped. The others ran. We didn't regroup. We didn't form a line. We just ran. Through the woods, past broken trail signs and old drainage ditches. Overgrown roots grabbed at our ankles. Thorns tore at our clothes. Behind us, the coordinated ones pursued, but slower now, like they'd already done what they needed to do. Disrupt the group, scatter the strong. Hours later, only 6 of us remained. We reached a burned-out barn on the far edge of what used to be a suburb. Took shelter there, barricaded what we could. No one's spoken in hours. The forest is quiet now. We don't know what those new infected are. Maybe mutations, maybe something else. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. The university is gone. The tunnels are overrun. And we're not students anymore. We're just what's left, 487 days after the outbreak, and this is still just the middle of it. No rescue, no fix, no message, only motion, only choices, and only one question left. Where do we run next? That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.